Hello and welcome to Beyond Biotech, the weekly podcast from Labiotech. I'm Dylan Kissain and this is episode 200 for the podcast, a milestone for all of us at Labiotech. Today, I'm delighted to welcome back a very special guest, Joachim Eeckhout. Joachim is a co-founder of Labiotech and he joins us now as co-owner of Knowbio and the founder of The Science Marketer. From a small student blog launched in Paris in 2012 to becoming Europe's leading independent biotech media platform, Joachim tells the Labiotech story, one of vision, persistence, and a deep belief that the European life science sector deserved better storytelling. In this episode, we go back to the very beginning, the frustrations, a bike tour of France that became legendary, the leap to Berlin, the fundraising rounds, the acquisition, and the launch of this very podcast. We'll also hear where Joachim is today with his new ventures, his candid take on the current biotech media landscape in Europe, and what he sees coming next for science communication and media in our industry. So, whether you've followed Labiotech since day one, or you're discovering Joachim's work for the first time, you're in for a fascinating conversation. Joachim, welcome to Beyond Biotech.
Thanks for the invitation. Really happy to be here.
Maybe you can start by telling us a little bit about your background. What first drew you into biotechnology as a discipline in the first place?
I think I've always been interested about biology at school, and I tried medicine for 1 year, but really didn't really stick to it. And then I found an interesting program in Paris. It's a school called biotech, specialized in engineering of biotechnology, and that's really where I dived into the biotech field, biotech science, etc. And always been interested about it since.
What about when it came to media, though? Was there any sort of early attraction there too?
Yeah, I think I was also kind of interest really early on. Like I always was reading magazines and stuff like this, like on different topics, not necessarily biotech, but also like when I was young, I read a lot of magazines, and I was always interested about how you craft kind of the content behind it. And as I was growing up with internet, basically opening other ways of creating content, I really had a big interest for media and scientific media, first of all. Yeah.
Well, today you're co-owner of Knowbio as well as the founder of The Science Marketer. It must keep you pretty busy. What does a typical day look like for you?
It keeps me busy definitely. Typical day. I would say it's there is no typical day because every day is very different. But if there is a red line, it's a lot about creating content. And so through the different publications we have and through the blog I also created, there is always a question of how we create good content. Sometimes I create it myself, sometimes I'm editing, so it depends on what we are working on. But it's always linked to this basically. And even when it's about management of the company or this side of the business, there is always the underlying question of what we do with our content, how we monetize it, how we grow our audience, etc. So for me, that's really like the main thing in the day is constantly thinking about this, because in the end of the day, it's how we make our business, it's how we create value. So, yeah.
Now, the reason I wanted to have you on the podcast today is that we are celebrating our 200th episode of Beyond Biotech today. That's a milestone for the podcast and for any podcast, really. But the podcast is actually one of the youngest parts of Labiotech, having launched just 4 years ago. I want to dive into the history of Labiotech as a whole, starting right back nearly 15 years ago now in Paris. You and your co-founder, you were studying biotechnology and you became frustrated with the lack of digital media covering the industry and you decided to fix it. What was actually missing at the time? What was that initial aha moment that you had?
Yeah, so we have to put it back. It was in 2012, and yeah, very very different media landscape as you can imagine from compared to now. And I think two things were frustrating us. First, it was the fact that most of the biotech media at the time were still in print. And yeah, 2012 was already, like a lot of things happening on internet, a lot of media moving to internet, or like mainstream media already had moved to internet since a while. And we were not seeing this shift in biotech. And the second thing was also related to the accessibility to those media in terms of price first, because we were students, so not so much money to spend on media. Like typically having to pay maybe €1,000 per year to get access to those print magazines. So we wanted to basically change the two issues, like bringing biotech media online and making it accessible for everyone. So basically like having free content for everyone.
In those really early days, you were doing everything, curating news, you were conducting the interviews. And I understand you also did a Tour de France by bike to visit and film biotech CEOs. What was that experience like? It must have just been great fun hitting the road, meeting leaders like that.
Yeah, so this was a bit crazy to be honest. So it was, I think, maybe a year and a half after we started the platform, basically. Um, and it was a combination of wanting to take holidays anyway in the summer and doing something useful with it. So we decided, okay, like let's plan this trip where we will meet as many biotech CEOs as possible. In a fun and relaxed way, and make a movie out of it. So this was really the goal, like make kind of a documentary about the French biotech industry. And yeah, it took a few months to put everything together, but we managed to do it. And then I think we traveled for, I don't know, I think it was 2 weeks maybe. And like taking all the gears with us, so we had cameras, I don't know, like everything you need, for the sounds, the lights, whatever, to make a documentary. So we didn't know anything about filming, but I think we did quite a good job as amateurs, and it was just great to meet also all the people directly in the companies, like the people who were actually leading the biotech companies in France, and this created a really good network for us first from the trip directly. And then also good publicity, because afterward, what we did also is, of course, like we had a few kind of screening events, in Paris. Later on, we even screened it abroad, in the US, in Germany, in the UK. I think maybe some other places as well. And this was, like excellent to create brand and network basically. So yeah, it was a good stunt. I think today I don't know if I would do it again this way, but at the time, like it was kind of naive from two students doing kind of a summer project like this, and it worked really well. Yeah.
Let's talk a bit about that network, because you've mentioned elsewhere you remember being recognized by a top executive at a big Paris biotech conference when you were still just a student. How did that feel? What did it tell you about the potential for Labiotech at that stage?
Yeah, this was really interesting. So because at the time, I don't know if we mentioned it, but the platform was only in French and for the French industry. Um, and most of our readers, I think, were still, around Paris, basically, where we were also studying. And we were regularly going to conferences, kind of to get the experience from it, but also like to cover it as starting journalists. And like rapidly we saw people like recognizing us, recognizing kind of the brand, etc., saying that they were reading the newsletter or like following the website or things like this. We were doing a good job. So it was a lot of motivation to hear this, and even today when when you go somewhere and people tell you they're reading your media, it's always motivating, and also getting feedback from them is always great. So I think this, like, the potential was getting clearer when we started having those kind of signals from the people directly. Of course, you also see like the traffic of the website was growing, etc. So this was always comforting, but you don't have the face-to-face experience you can have at conferences or with meeting people. So it was just very good signals for the future potential we were thinking about.
Like you say, you started with Labiotech.fr as a French language blog and publication. Did you get the feeling that it was just a French problem that you were dealing with when it came to digital media? Or did you have an inkling that there was a bigger information hole there?
So originally, yes. Just because we didn't know better, basically, at the beginning. So originally, we were trying to fix it in France. Sorry. But as I said, after the Tour de France we did, and the different screenings we had abroad, we also spent, both of us, like the two founders, we spent time abroad in doing internships. We rapidly saw that the issue was not only in France but more broadly in Europe. So basically, the problem of not having a leading media platform for biotech, which is free or almost free, was also the same in, I don't know, Germany, in Spain, and other countries across Europe. And there was nothing federating Europe as one block, typically, which I think in biotech is the case. Like a lot of biotech companies identify themselves as European versus US, basically. So that's when we started seeing the bigger need, and that's when we started also thinking about, okay, maybe there is something bigger to do than just France. And that's basically 2014 when we started having this idea of a bigger platform for Europe.
Yeah, so you did scale from that French site to a pan-European platform. You moved to Berlin. You rebranded as Labiotech.eu in 2014. Why Berlin?
Good question. So we were basically looking at going into a European capital. We were in Paris, so this was still one of the options, but we were kind of broke after like when you finish studying, you don't have any revenue, so you have to look for cheaper places to stay than Paris. London was on the list, but for the same reason, it was economically difficult. And then we both had personal ties to Germany, so it was more a natural choice. And actually, it was a good choice. Berlin, to attract talent, to attract kind of investor attention, especially in media, I think was easier than in Paris, for instance. So it was a good choice for us, and I still live in Germany, so yeah, still convinced.
What were the biggest challenges, though, you faced in making that leap? Maybe it's easier economically, or maybe it's better for investor attention. but you had a language barrier, an audience that you had to build now at a European level. You had to hire this talent that you could find there. What made it difficult in those early days?
Yeah, maybe a bit of everything, to be honest. Again, like I think we came with a very naive mindset about how to build a company, how to build a media, especially in biotech. But which also brings the advantage that we didn't put any limit. We kind of did things we thought were creating value. We worked with people with the same motivation. So like when we were hiring, I think a lot of the early team members, they were as passionate as we were. And this was really interesting. It's kind of the startup mindset. Like when you think about it, it's really this like a group of people trying to build something. And yeah, of course there was a lot of challenges, like growing the audience. It took time. Actually, we were quite lucky with this. Like we grew the audience quite rapidly, and we achieved our goals quite rapidly. But still, it was a challenge. Monetization, the same. It's not easy to monetize a new media. The language barrier, I think, was maybe the easiest at first because we decided from the start to do everything in English on our platform. So like having an English, like written English media for Europe, and actually in biotech, it was a good choice because most of the companies are international from day one. So everyone really speaks English. If you go to any conferences, everything is in English. So this was one of the easiest challenge, I would say. But then it's just building everything that came after, which of course was not easy. But I think we did a good job and we learned quickly. I think that was the most important. We did certainly a lot of mistakes, but most of the time we didn't do it twice. So this was good.
Tell me a little bit about this learning, because you had this background in science, but you had no formal journalism training at the time. And you were turning what was a French-based blog or platform into a professional media outlet. I mean, tell me about some of the learning that you had to do on the job. Does anything stand out in your memory?
Yeah, so journalism, we didn't have any background in journalism except maybe, like when we started basically the French platform, that's when we started learning about this. And again, like we were very, very open-minded, like I think learning very quickly. So when we moved to the European platform, there was already a bit of experience, we accumulated over 2 years. But then I think like the journalism side, I think fortunately it's very pragmatic. You don't need to, it's not like a science degree where you need to actually learn the science, right? It's more like a thing you learn on the job most of the time. Even if you have done a journalism degree, I think you learn most of your work on the job when you start having a job. And it was the same for us. Like we learned a lot through doing things, creating content, having interviews, going to cover conferences, all of those things you have to do as a journalist. So yeah, I think it never really like, it was not slowing us down because we didn't have the degree. And actually, like, we also trained afterward a lot of scientists to become journalists. So yeah, maybe it's even an advantage in some ways because we knew the science already from our studies, which I think in this particular type of media is like the most challenging part. So yeah, no, was challenging, but not the hardest thing to learn.
2016, 2017, you did some seed funding rounds, and these were big milestones for Labiotech. They allowed you to start investing in the content, in products, in people, and the team. What was it like learning to raise money as a young media startup then? Again, this is something that a degree in biotechnology doesn't prepare you for either.
Yeah. Nothing prepares you for this. Even an MBA in the best school doesn't prepare you for this. I think it's very hard to raise money, especially if you have a media startup. You don't fit in the typical venture capital kind of criteria. And still today, by the way, like it was the case 10, 15 years ago, but still today it's very hard. So we learned a lot about it's basically like another level of networking, like raising money. It's very, very like networking focused, I think. In the end, like you have to contact a lot of people. Maybe those people know other people, introduce you, etc. And at the end, you manage to bring a group of investors together, which was interesting because in like compared to what we have been doing before, it was a bit similar. Like the networking aspect of our job was already very present. So I think we luckily we knew how to do it, which gave us some advantages. And then it's a lot of luck as well. Like very early on, we met a family office in Berlin who was investing in media, like an entrepreneur from the media industry who was basically reinvesting in other startups. They supported us a lot. We were in the accelerator for a few months, and it gave us kind of the first push to find other investors and convince them. And in the end, we convinced a small group of investors, like mostly like from the media side or from the biopharma side, and they supported us for the next few years.
You certainly built on the funding. The traffic to the website grew dramatically from even just a few thousand monthly readers to more than 100,000 monthly readers in late 2017. But you also had a shift on the editorial side. You went away from just aggregating press releases to really producing some original journalism, rankings, community-focused things as well. Was that a deliberate choice, a deliberate strategic choice on your part?
Yeah, completely. So this was an early choice. So when we started moving from the French platform to the European platform, we immediately decided that all the content would be original, would not be curation anymore. And basically, that's also when we decided to close the French platform completely. So the Labiotech.fr was stopped completely, and at the time it was not easy because I think when we took this decision, it was still I think the French website had more traffic than the European one. So it was really a bet on like we can shift towards something bigger and without really like any metrics backing us up. So. But then very rapidly when we start focusing on the European website with our own content, like covering the industry in depth, then we saw the traffic taking over. And yeah, basically that was a choice, kind of a bet, and I think it worked quite well.
Yeah, well, the bet paid off, and over the next couple of years, you kept driving that forward. Then in 2021, you were acquired by InPart. Tell me a little bit about the background to that acquisition. Did you even know that there was an acquisition offer on the table? Did it go through smoothly?
Yeah, so we are jumping a few years forward. In between, a lot of things also happen. So, like we're also studying started organizing our own events, and we launched different things, different projects, etc. So we just passed quickly, but basically all along those years, we already had some kind of discussions around acquisitions. So not with in part, but with other potential companies who were interested. We never went through it, but it was always something we kept in the back of our mind, because also just simply we had investors. So when you have investors, you of course have to think about their return. So it was something we were always like keeping the door open, basically. And I think the first time we talked to InPart was directly with Gilles, the CEO. I think maybe it was in 2019, certainly something like this. And we had a really good conversation. Like I think really from the first conversation, we saw some kind of synergies between what we were building and what InPart was building. And we kept contact along the years, basically. And in 2021, things were starting to become a bit more real for us in terms of exit and acquisition. Like we entered different discussions. InPart was among them, and then we made things concretely with an offer, with a plan to create synergies between the two companies. And yeah, like did it go smoothly? It's, I think every acquisition takes effort, and this one as well, from both sides, by the way. Like it was efforts from both sides to make it happen, to build something together, of course. But in the end, I think it went really well, because we had good intentions on both sides. We had kind of similar mindsets in a way, similar maybe cultures as well, a bit, like overlaps, at least in our cultures. So then it went smoothly in the end.
It might have been an exit for the investors at that stage, and every acquisition is a sort of exit. But you continued on at Labiotech until only about a year ago now. If you look back at this whole journey of building Labiotech up from a student project in France to an established media platform in Europe, I'll ask you two things. What do you think you're most proud of there? And what was the biggest surprise along the way?
Yeah, tough one. No, the most proud, I think it's really the community we helped building along the way. If you think about it, in any industry, you need information, right? And especially in industries like biotech, where information is everything. The biotech industry moves through partnering. And if companies don't know what's happening, in other companies, it doesn't really work. So I think through our work, we have built a lot of this, facilitating partnering. Basically, that's maybe the best way to put it. And still today, that's why I'm still actually in the same kind of business, because it's still what's driving me in terms of creating value. The information we provide helps innovation at the end of the day. The biggest surprise, I don't know. It was a lot of surprise, I think, but maybe something interesting. And I think we have several stories like this, but I remember very clearly covering when we started the platform, a company nobody knew about, which was called biotech. And was really just a small company in Germany doing messenger RNA. And we kept kind of a strong focus on them for a few years. Like I think very early, we saw there was something in this company that was really interesting in terms of technology. And another one as well called CureVac, also a German one. And it was surprising to see how big it became over the years. We had really a lot of contacts with them before the pandemic, and now it's kind of household name. Everybody knows them, what they've been doing. So I think this is also what's surprising me, like, to see, like, being in the first row seat to see how those things evolve. And sometimes you just cover a small startup that is just getting out of the lab, and a few years later they're becoming really big companies. So this is very surprising and always interesting to see.
Your day-to-day with Labiotech might have come to an end, but you stayed really active when it comes to biotech and biopharma media. You're now co-owner of Knowbio, a life science media and communications agency. You combine strategic marketing with established media brands. Tell me a little bit about Knowbio. What do they do? Mm-hmm. What sort of companies are you working with?
Yeah. So first of all, Knowbio was known before as Biocom Interrelations, and we basically took over the business at the end of last year with my business partner, Michel Court. And the company has been in biotech media for over 30 years. The company started with a print publication called Transcript, and basically it's a trade publication for the biotech industry in Germany and the DACH region. And it's still active today. It's one of our publications. So we have this German publication both in print quarterly and also online. So basically every day you can read the news about the German biotech industry online. This one is in German as well. And we have other publications. One is called European Biotechnology Magazine. As the name says, basically we are covering Europe on a day-to-day basis online and also through a quarterly magazine. And last year we also launched, it was actually a project I launched before joining Knowbio. We launched Biotech Snap. It's a daily briefing, like a 5-minute briefing you can read about the biotech globally. So in 5 minutes you can see everything that happened over the last 24 hours basically. And it's another way to provide information, like a much more digested way, much more modern. It's made to be read on the go also, like basically you get it in your inbox in the morning. Maybe you read it, I don't know, like through the commuting or when you take a coffee or whatever. So yeah, we have the 3 media brands at the moment, which provides, like, we're going from local with Transcript, the German publication, to something more global like Biotech Snap, and in between we have the European focus. And yes, that's basically what we are trying to build. So it's very interesting because when I started Labiotech.eu, we knew Biocom already was, kind of competitor. But we always had really good relationship with them as well. And last year, basically, I had the opportunity to come in and help build what they have been, already building before this. So it's very interesting for me. I stay in what I like this mix of media and biotech, with new challenges, new formats, like the print. Like I didn't do print media before, so it's also very interesting to learn about it. And that's where we are now.
You also founded The Science Marketer, a newsletter. It's a platform, really a community that gives this actionable advice to science marketers, to communicators. What prompted you to start that, and what sort of topics are you covering there?
Yeah, so The Science Marketer, I started it a few years ago, and the idea was that through our work as media, we are constantly in contact with kind of marketing and communication, right? Like that's um, through what we do ourselves, like creating the content, publishing it, promoting it, and building audiences around it, but also through the customers we might have through like our advertising products and things like this. So for the last 10 years, I was always kind of educating also marketing managers in the life sciences industry and telling them, like how we can help them with the campaigns they do, etc. So you accumulate a bit of experience through this, and at some point I just wanted to, like write about it and reshare it, basically, kind of as a blog, personal blog. So that's how it started, with me writing posts about different topics related to life sciences marketing. And then I started interviewing other people when I was running out of my own ideas. So that was an excellent way to get other people to talk about this topic. And that's basically what you get on the website, like a lot of learning material about marketing specifically applied to life sciences. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you've got what is a pretty unique perspective on the industry right now. You're in the digital media side, local media, also European and global media, and then in print too. How would you describe the current landscape in Europe for biotech media?
Biotech media, yeah. So the media in general, like if you look at the last years, basically there's been a huge impact on what media are. I think most of all through AI, basically, like you can see a very big shift right now. What's happening in media because of AI. So that's one thing that's touching, I think, everyone globally. But in Europe specifically, well, I think it's interesting because, Labiotech, a few years ago, we made a decision, or basically after the acquisition, we made the decision to go globally with the Labiotech. And it's still the case today, like the focus is global. So you don't really have a player focusing on the news day to day, specifically in Europe for biotech, right? Except actually the media we have, so European Biotechnology Magazine. I think that's the only one left with really this clear focus on Europe for biotech. So I see also an opportunity to rebuild a bit what Labiotech has been building in the past with this very strong community in Europe. I think Labiotech is at a point now where it's really global because it's become so big, so it makes sense. But for us, I think it's an opportunity definitely to focus on this part of the industry and be a voice for this local, I would say, community. So yeah, that's what I'm seeing now.
Tell me a little bit about what's coming next for Knowbio. Is there anything exciting that you can share with us? Any plans that are about to come to fruition?
Yeah. So as I just said before, we want to focus a lot on the European side of our business. We have different ideas, like basically like we're also relaunching a new platform, more modern, with new features, etc. Maybe new types of content, of formats. Yeah, we have a lot of ideas, but before we do this, we're actually raising a bit of money. So again, I'm going through through this step again. But yeah, that's right now a big focus for me. We are planning to close, like during the summer, basically, and then start investing a bit more in this project. So yeah, that's the big focus right now.
And what about more generally? How do you see this media landscape evolving in Europe and even globally? Because it really is a global ecosystem.
Yeah. So also, like as I said before, I think AI is impacting a lot how people are consuming content, how people are perceiving content as well. So I think for us, what's important is really to provide quality information. Like you cannot produce AI slop in publications in this type of industry, right? Like you have to provide good quality, verified quality. So you always need, humans to be producing your content. And so that's something where we clearly see efforts to be done, like having reporters on the ground. And that's why we also believe in this European focus, because we are in Europe. We can do a good job here. We know a lot of people here. Like it's much easier to bring this quality when you are locally there. And if you look at US media, they are doing an excellent work in the US, like Fierce Biotech, Endpoints, they are just excellent. But I think on the European side, they don't necessarily have the ground, the boots on the ground. So that's where we see an opportunity also for us to focus on and really be strong in Europe. Yeah.
Joachim, where can our listeners go to find out more about what you're working on and to keep themselves informed about the industry?
Yeah, so we have a lot of websites, as I said. So I will just give you the main one, which is Knowbio, so Knob.io. I think I forgot the letter. Right.
Try it again. Start it again.
Okay. Yeah. Wait. So yeah, you can find us at Knowbio, which is knowb.io, where you will find also links to our different publications and other things we do. So I think it's the best place to start. Yeah.
Joachim, thanks for joining us today on Beyond Biotech.
Thank you for the invitation. It was nice.
That's it for this episode. Don't forget to check out all the latest news and analysis at Labiotech.eu. I hope wherever you are in the world, you have a great week ahead. Thanks for listening, and I hope you'll join us again next time for another Beyond Biotech.